Hello, my beautiful friend, and welcome back to my channel. So, today I just wanted to chat to you again about identity shifting because in the other video that I did, and I'll link it above in a card and or down below, I go super deep into the identity shift that I'm going through. Like we're all going through identity shifts at all times, but lately there's so much shit going on in the world that it would be really hard for you to not be going through a personal identity shift of sort of magnitude. Because when our collective consciousness, right, the world around us is in shambles and is evolving in and of itself, right? Like it too, even though it's really hard right now, like it's also growing, it is also expanding and evolving to its own higher state of frequency and consciousness, right? Like we are outgrowing certain things, and some of the collective is sort of staying stuck in the revolutions and the judgment and perpetuating the polarity and the duality of separation and division and fighting and anger and wars and all that shit, right? And then there's other ones of us, like in the collective, where our consciousness is rising above that and evolving above that. And it's not to say that like we are above other people or that you are above someone else. It's more just that when your awareness starts to expand and to grow, you essentially can outgrow your identity and your personality and who you were before. And a lot of people, like, they think that these identity crises, or that an identity shift is a crisis, and that it's going to come with some like big neon sign and some big announcement. And there's really no such thing. There's no moment where the universe sort of taps you on the shoulder and starts to say like, congratulations, you have evolved to the next level. And or you are evolving, like, would you like a glass of champagne while you arrive? It's usually a much more subtle process, and it shows up in really small kind of ways, like suddenly feeling bored in conversations that you used to like, or suddenly feeling like you either want to stop doing interests that have always been your primary hobbies, or you're starting to be drawn to things that like you never thought you would be, right? And you're just like, that's interesting. So maybe it's people, places, hobbies, and you catch yourself thinking like, wait, when did I start, when did I like that, and when did I change, and when did that become an issue, or when did I start to like this? And these are all signs and signals of you having an identity shift, and it can happen at any point in your life, not just at midlife. It's not just a midlife crisis. It's not just when something dramatic happens. It's something that occurs when you are expanding your consciousness, expanding your awareness, and you're starting to question the person that you are, and the person that you want to be, and the person that you want to be in the future. And it goes without saying, that like what's happening underneath all of this, right, like is so much on at an energetic level. And like, because I obviously teach energy intelligence and how to access the energetics, I thought it would be helpful to really just understand that this is not about like having a mindset shift, right? It's not about like just thinking positive and like visualizing, or like doing all the things. It's really about recognizing that your internal software and blueprint is shifting, and which is a very fundamental thing that's happening. And the roles that you've taken on, the masks, the character, right, that you've been playing, and all of the beliefs and the values and the associated skills and behaviors and things that are linked to that identity, right? Because we have multiple identities. So the first thing I want you to be aware of is that you're not losing your sense of self, right? You'll never lose your ego entirely. It's not possible, because like it's what enables us to function. It's like the filter through which all of our energy, our soul state, comes through and differentiates as a human being. So you're never going to just like lose yourself, but you might lose parts and pieces of your identity, or different identities that you have been very attached to and very subscribed to, that, or let's call it a role, if you're not used to really like the word identity. Like there's just different roles that you played at different points in your life that are no longer becoming, or that are no longer maintaining their relevance to the degree that they used to. And so like all of the associated expectations and projections and rejections that you've had from others, right? Like if people are expecting you to be a certain way, or if they're going to reject you because, or you're afraid that they're going to reject you if you no longer like play that role. Like this all happens, like even pre-verbal, like I was going to say childhood, but even like well, in our childhood, we before we've even have the capacity to speak, which is why it's called pre-verbal, but even pre even when we're in utero, right? So it's not even pre-verbal, it's like even like pre, like born onto earth and are navigating this three-dimensional, life experience that we are finding ourselves in. And so, right, like when this starts to dissolve, or when you start to question all of these different parts and pieces of, yourself, and you start to realize that these roles, these identities are not serving you as much as they potentially once were, it can become very jarring. Why? Because when you were little, right, when you were a child, you just accepted that that's the way you were going to be in order to gain someone else's love and survive for survival. So often these roles and these expectations that we are unconsciously like playing out in the form of like, like this is my identity, this is my personality, and this is who I'm going to be. I'm going to people please, and I'm going to say yes to everything, and I'm going to be the fun person, or I'm going to be the serious student, or I'm going to be the one that like goes and proves everyone wrong, or whatever it is. If those, you know, expectations of yourself even start to be dismantled and start to dissolve, it's actually a good thing, because it means that you are now evolving and you are now expanding your sphere of awareness and consciousness, and that you are tapping into other identities and other possibilities that maybe you never felt you had the permission or the right to do. And now, for whatever reason, right, like you are maybe coming to grips with the fact that the reality that you have found yourself in right now may not serve you the way that you want it to, or may not, feel the way that you want to. It might not feel fulfilling. I talk a lot about this in my fulfillment factor training, where like the success that you often create, right, like high achievers, you watching this likely are like a high achiever. You've, created exceptional milestones and success in most areas of your life. And then, you might get to a place where you're just like, okay, like I've got here, but like, why doesn't it feel fulfilling to me? Why doesn't it feel good? And that's usually because you are creating success, or you are creating results in your life, aka manifesting things that are not necessarily aligned, which is why I teach aligned living also. And I have the aligned living collective now, which is like it's not aligned for you. And when something's not aligned for you, you outgrow it. And either the universe, right? God, whatever the universe, whatever you believe in, will bring in reinforcements, like the people, the places, the experiences, for you to balance those lopsided perceptions, or those perceptions of like you need to be this way, which is like absolute like bollocks. Or right, like you start to consciously endeavor and do it yourself, and you start to balance your lopsided perceptions. And what I mean by that is like lopsided meaning that certain roles are good versus bad, that you need to be like a people pleaser versus like saying no, that and either all of those like good, bad, right, wrong are variations of charge. And at your soul state, what I call your soul state, which is one of the highest leverage points of change, there is no charge, right? Like a soul doesn't have a sex, a preference, it doesn't think of good or bad or right or wrong or better or worse. It just like there's just light, there's insight, there's wisdom, there's infinite abundance, there's infinite vitality, and all the things, right? Like we are whole, healed, and complete at us at our soul state level. So basically, our soul state and all of the different identities that we take on that make up our personality are really important to master and to be aware of. Because if you want to change your reality, your current reality, or your future reality, you absolutely have to change your personality, as Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about often. And your personality is made up of all of these different identities and these different roles, and each of these different identities and roles have different expectations of how we are supposed to, or how we believe we are supposed to show up. And what happens is that in our childhood, right, we take on these roles, take on these identities largely unconsciously, because they are the behaviors, they are the ways and means that we are believing, right? So it's behavior, it's belief, it's capability, it's skill, it's like all the leverage points, right? But it's ultimately being informed by and the identity, which is even higher than those, to ultimately what? Get our needs met. And why would we want to get our needs met? Because if we don't, we perceive that we will die. So it's ultimate survival. So love from our caregivers, right? Like it's not actual love, it's survival that we perceive that we are getting from, right, our any action that we take to try and get attention, to try and get some warmth, some nurturing, some milk, some attention, some acknowledgement, some like security. And if you didn't get these survival needs met when you were young, then now you have set your nervous system up to recognize or to feel like there is danger when you act in a certain way, or that you're not going to get your needs. And then there's a whole new set of survival mechanisms and identities that get created for you to then overcompensate, right, or undercompensate based on whatever it is. And so it's all happening at an incredibly rapid speed. And so recognizing this is basically the first step, because letting go of a lot of these identities and roles can absolutely bring up all sorts of different emotions, right? Like resistance and discomfort and grief and nostalgia. And you might even feel like your sensitivity is heightening and you're becoming a lot more empathetic and a lot more emotional. And, you also just might feel exhausted from it all because it is an emotional, right? It's energy in motion. So you have to like let the energy flow through you. It's not about denying it or like trying to change it and trying to fix it and trying to like carry like what's going on? Like I feel like I'm in, like overwhelm. And I have to say, to some of my clients, like this is like just be with it. Like welcome that energy in motion, welcome those emotions and like welcome those identities that are wanting that you are questioning and wondering about because it's a good thing when you're wondering, you're in the question and being in the question is literally the process of conscious awareness, conscious collapsing of the charges, the duality, the polarity of like right, wrong, good, bad, better, worse, right? When you get stuck in those charges, either side, the positive or the negative, and all the variations of that, that's when you have these big revolutions and like it feels like you're on a roller coaster and your nervous system is all over the place and dysregulated, and you feel ultimately like dysfunctional during this identity shift. So even though like your goals don't make sense anymore and your loved like who you want to hang out with doesn't make sense anymore, and you might feel like your tolerance for, people is just like gone out the window and it just honestly like all of that is normal. It's very, very normal. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You don't need to be fixed. It's just your system recalibrating. And if anything, it's time for you to just sit with it and be with it and allow it to be and to pass through you. So the very first step is being aware of it, that it's happening. The second step is just to allow it to happen without any judgment and without any fighting and resistance, because the more you fight it, the more you're going to feel this like tension in your body. You're going to feel discomfort. You're and that's like you trying to hold on to it to survive, because you think like if you let it go, you're not going the ego is not going to be there anymore. But that's not true. There's going to be multiple other identities and roles that you will take on and that you will play and that are important for you to play. So just recognize that that discomfort is literally the bridge between who you were and who you are becoming. The third thing is don't rush the clarity that you seek regarding what's next. Right? Like it's like a snake is going to shed its skin, and we are literally at the end of the snake year, where we are literally shedding the last bit of our skin. Because one of the biggest mistakes that people make is trying to define the new version of themselves, right? And like visualize the new version and the perfect version, and like, feel the wish fulfilled and embody it and visualize it and write about it and affirm it and like do all the things. And honestly, sometimes it's about allowing, it's about receiving, it's about just like quietening all of the noise and all of the like thoughts and emotions, right? Energy, emotion, thoughts are just energy also. Like all of the, just allow that energy to settle and to allow what's next to download, to come through, to be received, right? Like that's the yin part of the balance of the yin and the yang. The yang is like making it happen and like set your goals and like get clear, and like 2006 is around the corner. But that's also like, like tear the skin off the snake and like let it, that's not like your old identity. Like embrace it. Say thank you for like how it served you, and really, you know, learn from it, gain the insights, relish in those insights, and embody them, embrace them, integrate them, let them flood your cells with the insight and the wisdom about like what worked from that identity, what didn't feel good about it, what didn't feel aligned, like, what was the reason and the rationale that like you felt you had to do that, like where did that come from, so that you can maybe not repeat that and do it again. So all of those things are really important to do, especially if you don't want to repeat patterns moving forward. And the majority of the work that I do with people is they repeat patterns. They're repeating patterns unconsciously because they're trying to hold on to who they think they should be, and or they're trying to rush who they want to be. And they don't really know who that is because they've never had the space and the silence to allow like their soul state to inform them of what that actually is. It's not something, the new you is not something you decide. It's something you discover. That's what I've learned from my own personal journey. And trust me, like I've made 1,000 million multiple, like we're all making thousands of identity shifts. It's the discovery happens through self-inquiry, questions. It happens through rest. It happens through regulation of your nervous system. It happens through reflection. It happens through, making micro aligned choices to see like, to try them on to see how they feel. It's not about forcing in any way, shape, or form. Whether your identity is definitely one of the highest leverage points of change. And if you're wanting to manifest anything in your life with ease and speed and consistency, you have to, right, create and manifest from one of the highest leverage points, which is an identity. And so when you can measure, who you are and what is truly aligned for you. And I've got all sorts of like fun, tools and profiles and assessments and diagnostics and systems and, methodologies and models and just like all the things that, you can choose your own adventure to dive deeper into, what tickles your fancy in terms of helping you to measure all these very intangible things, these energetics, but that matter. Like these are the things that truly matter the most, right? Like who you are and what you value and what's important to you and what you believe and like how you think and how you relate and how you lead and how you parent and what how you are energetically and uniquely designed to thrive. So that's where where I use like human design and whole brain thinking and sometimes the Enneagram, right, to understand your motivational drivers and get you out of that box, right? It's not to, it's funny, like some people use the Enneagram to like understand their personality and understand who they are, um, which is very helpful. But like I use it to help you get out of that box because there's a shadow side to, your type. And there are other numbers, right, that you need to lean into and stretch to and like grow into and expand and explore. Like we're not just one thing, we're not just one number. Like there's so much more to who you are, obviously. So, my beautiful friend, identity shifts are definitely both challenging and supporting, as is everything in life, because without challenge and support, equal amounts, we don't grow and evolve. So, if it is really, really challenging you right now and you need some one on one support, definitely get connected with me and I'll, absolutely support you through it. But just know that, like, there is no challenge without equal amounts of support already inherently in your system. So, you just have to consciously look for it and find it, and you will, guaranteed, every time. Always equal amounts of support and challenge, positive, negative, right, wrong, good, bad, light, dark, etc. It's just the nature of light and energy. All right, I'm going to bed. I love you lots. I'll see you in the next one.